Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in.
Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha. I head up brand awareness at Reveal. This week we are broadcasting live from Legalweek 2024 in New York City. Each episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live gives me the opportunity to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest this session is a return guest, Ilan Sherr, who is a director, DLA Piper UK, and executive director of Ascension. Ilan, welcome back. Thank you. I'd like to have you start by reminding those who are return guests and educating those who are new guests about what Ascension is.
So we have been working with Reveal for quite some time now. That sounds better. So we've been developing pre-training AI models to spot particular legal issues. At the moment, we've been looking for breaches in the law and using that in a variety of ways, speeding up investigations, running eDiscovery faster, but then also branching out to wider areas outside of the traditional eDiscovery models. So what we've done so far is we've trained models that spot cartels. My background is I'm an antitrust lawyer, so cartels is a big risk for businesses, and it's something that businesses don't normally find out about until it's too late. So it was a good thing to train up, and it's also where businesses are spending huge amounts of money in document review to find the issues. Once we launched that, we got a lot of feedback from clients on what models they were interested in next. And by far the top model that clients were looking for to deal with was bribery risks. Bribery is an endemic risk globally for businesses that are working multinationally, and also particularly there are certain jurisdictions which are much higher risk of bribery. And if you operate in the US, you have FCPA compliance. And so it was an area that we wanted to look into, and we launched the model back in August and have been deploying it.
You have now 2 new case studies, right?
Yes, I have 2 new cases, so fresh off of the press that I haven't memorized the facts.
Right, it's so fresh off the press, we actually have paper copies here for you to work from, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us about them.
We have 2 interesting cases. One is your traditional investigation. So we had a client in the aerospace industry, in the airplane industry, and they had a bribery issue that they were looking at, where they had found some corruption that had gone on, and they had run an investigation. They'd found something, but they were in the process of bringing the case to trial, and they also wanted to see if there were any other assets that they could recoup, and also in the case of bribery, you can go after individual directors for personal liability, and that would have opened up some additional resources that could have been recouped. So they were interested in doing a search, but they had already done an original search. The data was available, and they asked us to run through the data again.
And?
Okay, so to give you some sort of idea, the data size involved 6 individuals. It was mainly email, so we were in a period of time that sort of predates the huge volume of chat that has come about. And we had just under 3 million documents to review, so 2.6 million documents. And what was interesting is multiple languages were involved. So the data was in English, Spanish, French, and German. So we ran the review, In the original review, the team that was working on it had identified 22 documents that were bribery risks. So we had a clear sort of idea of this was a data set that was going to find stuff in. So we ran, the way we approach it is we throw our Ascension AI that are built through the pre-trained through the Reveal models. We throw that at the data set, and that creates some workflows for lawyers to review. Without giving too much of the game away, the idea is not to review all of the high-risk documents first, but to try and cover as much breadth and depth of the data set as possible so that we identify all the issues as quickly as possible and then delve deeper. So we ran the review, and we only had to review 2,804 documents.
Out of, how many was that?
2.6 million.
Okay.
So about 0.1% of the data set, so a fraction of a percent of the data set, which meant that we could run it very, very quickly. We found 86 documents that were identified for potential bribery behavior. So 64 of those were not identified in the original investigation.
You found very rapidly.
Very rapidly.
And with comparatively little effort.
Comparatively little effort.
More documents, which is great.
So businesses are coming to us all the time saying,
yeah,
we have smaller legal budgets than we had previously. We want you to do more for less.
Right.
And that is a very hard thing for lawyers to do. But with the power of AI, what we can do is we use these pre-trained models, and then you can redeploy them and do a lot more for a lot less.
There must be those who go on then to ask, what makes you confident that there aren't another 66 or 86 or whatever highly relevant documents that you did not find?
Okay, so we can never prove that.
Right.
And we can't prove that in any e-discovery. So whenever you're running a review, whatever methodology you're using, whether it's keyword search terms, whether it's technology-assisted review, you're always going to miss documents, but just because of the nature of it. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. And I will never say our AI is perfect. But I think in relation to the quality of what you find, we run certain analyses. So the reason, normally we would review much more than 0.1%. But what happened was, as we were reviewing the documents, we look at the number of documents that we're finding, and we plot them on a curve. And because we hadn't found relevant documents within a certain period, we thought, well, we'll stop that. So we scored the documents, and we reviewed all the high-risk documents, and we didn't find anything else. We thought, let's call it a day. And we did that quite early.
So this suggests not only a significantly less expensive process in terms of the amount of money the client has to pay, but the possibility for a much quicker process.
Yes, that's useful for clients in a variety of ways, because speed is important for developing your strategy, saving time with the lawyers, and also in certain circumstances, less so with bribery, but more so with cartels, there can be a race for immunity, and getting on top of the facts fast can open up other avenues that you could explore from a strategy perspective that might be closed if you take too long. Time is of the essence.
What were the reactions to these results?
We're very pleased internally. The client is pleased as well, because they're able to use that additional evidence in recruitment in the court proceedings, and it's evidence that they probably wouldn't have found otherwise. It hadn't come up in the original investigation, and it wasn't conducive to the methods of exploration that were used in the conventional review that was run beforehand.
Case study number 2 now.
Okay, so the first one was an investigation. The second one was an audit. Our client had not a whistleblower, but they had an inkling that there was an issue in a part of their business. This was a real estate company, and they wanted to take protective action. So this was preemptive. Now, normally, when outside of an investigation where you can afford the costs of a full e-discovery process and lawyers and external advisors for review, you can justify the expense of all of that process. But for proactive compliance, that's a lot harder to do. So they came to us to deploy our AI models in this context. So we don't have a comparative review. We didn't know whether we were going to find anything. So I can't tell you what the alternative was, but I can tell you what we did find. So again, a very large data set. This one also was over 3 million documents. The other one was just under. This was over 3 million documents. It related to data going back 5 years from around 12 employees with a mixture of the style of documents. We had just about 1.5 terabytes of data that we ingested into the data set. So not a small data set, but not one of these mega massive ones.
Right, but still significant in its size.
Still significant, and significant enough that if a in-house legal team were to look at that, they would say, because we don't know whether there's anything there, can we really justify the expense of a full-on review?
Right.
And the answer in that case was not. And they'd done a very quick review internally, some interviews, but they wanted to find out more. So, again, we ingested it into the platform. We threw the Ascension bribery AI against it, and then that identified documents to review. We review them in our proprietary exploration queue, looking for breadth and depth. So in that one, we stopped our review after 3,231 documents.
So about the same number, more or less.
It's about the same. So that's just over 0.1% of the data set.
Is there anything magical about that number, or is this just a coincidence?
It's just a coincidence. So on some of our cases, we've reviewed a little bit less. These are at the lower levels of the review elements. Some of them we reviewed quite a lot more. But even then, the most that we've ever reviewed was 0.55% of the data set. So using our cartel model and our bribery model, we've never needed to go higher than 1% of the documents. Whereas in conventional e-discovery, you might need to go a lot higher to get to the bottom of things.
Yep.
So they are fast and they are effective. But obviously, that's because we spent a lot of time and energy up front rather than having to do it on the case specifically for the facts. It's not replacing the traditional methods of review. It's just using it for these specific purposes.
Yep.
So a much lower level of documents, and the result of that meant that we only needed one individual to run the review, which was convenient because all of the data was in Polish, and I don't speak Polish, and very few of my team did. So we found one of our DLA lawyers in Poland helped us out. And what's interesting also about this data set is we didn't have any training data in Polish.
So how does that work?
Okay. So we trained our models in 35 jurisdictions, which are jurisdictions where we have white-collar crime practices across DLA Piper's global footprint. And within those 35 jurisdictions, we had data in 20 languages. So we trained it in those languages. We call that native language training. But you guys have use MBERT, which is a multi-language model. MBERT still has, I think, the highest number of languages in their large language model. They have over 100 languages, and Polish is one of them. So the AI itself speaks all of those languages. And what it does is it ingests the training in the 20 languages that we trained it in, and then looks for those issues in all 104 languages that it speaks, including Polish. So we throw the AI against the data set. It's not translating anything. It's just looking for the high-risk documents in those languages, in that language. And again, it pushes it to the top, and our reviewer finds all of the documents. And he did that in 67 hours. So again, this is Bartek, if you're listening. It was Bartek. And he even for 3,231 documents, that is a fast speed to run the review and write up the report afterwards.
Was that one long work week for him, or did it spill into the second? Either way, that's very, very fast.
It's 7 hours a day. That's 35 hours a week. But he's a hard worker. The poor guy, we didn't make him do that the whole day continuously. So it was spread over a long period of time, but that's very easily doable within 10 days.
Yeah, which is really quite astounding.
Yeah. And then equally, as a result of that, we found evidence. So just over 500 documents were relevant for bribery. So not documents containing bribery, but issues that an in-house legal team would want to look at, and 25 bribery documents. So as a result of that, we gave the report to the company, and they were able to take internal action against the employee, disciplinary action to deal with the issues and to stop the behavior. And from a compliance perspective, it's a win-win. So they have identified a risk, they've investigated it, they then dealt with it, and then they can adjust their compliance policies and procedures to make that more effective in the future. And then what's interesting is we could then rerun that review at a later stage to see how effective the interventions were. So as well as the actual bribery documents that they deal with, all of the shades of gray issues that they find, they can then take action.
So 2 quick questions because we're running out of time. First, any surprises?
Yes, the speed of which we find our first documents is quite high. So within the first 10 minutes, an hour of reviewing on both of these, we found smoking gun documents. So immediately we were able to, as we started reviewing, mention to the client, look, we found something. That's quite useful information because sometimes, when you're seeding a document review, you might not find the first smoking gun document until much later in the review. But obviously, if you are able to adapt your process mid-process, you can change what you're doing. Also, as part of an investigation, if you get evidence quickly, you can use that in the interviews. And so you have an iterative process whereby your other investigative tools can feed into what you're doing in a live process, and you don't need to be reliant on one and the other. So that timing is very interesting and exciting.
And final question, client feedback. What was it like?
Very good. So obviously in both of those, the clients were happy. And it's an anonymous case study, but our general counsel said, these are exactly the types of things that we're looking for, and we were very impressed with the speed and effectiveness of the models in spotting this type of behavior. And for us, that's a win-win because that's exactly what we trained it to do, and we've proven that it does it.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming back, joining us a third time, bringing us up to speed.
Thank you for having me again.
So Ilan Sherr,
as long as you're not bored with me,
never. Ilan Sherr is a legal director of DLA Piper UK and the executive director of Ascension AI Ltd. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Ilan, thank you.